Messiah, then just tell us who hit you. Prophesy, predict, tell us who just struck you in the face. And Jesus quietly took this abuse, and his disciples, the 11 of them now, are seeing this, and they're scared. In fact, the leader of the disciples, his name is Peter, he's hanging out outside when some people start saying, hey, aren't you one of his followers? And he is so afraid, he lies. And he says, I don't know this guy. And he doesn't just deny him once, he denies him 3 times. Why? Because he is so afraid. Because they were with Jesus when he calmed the storm, and he gave them the ultimate sermon, which was, why are you afraid? And then he calmed the storm. And then he told them, guys, guess what? Eventually I'm going to die, but don't be scared. I'm going to come back from the grave. So you would think this group of men would be really brave in the midst of this circumstance. But Jesus eventually is brought onto a cross, and after hours he dies. And at his death, most of his disciples aren't anywhere to be seen. A few days go by, and the text tells us at the beginning of the week, I want to read to you what happens. It says, on the evening of that first day of the week, when the disciples were together with the doors locked for fear of the Jewish leaders, Jesus came and stood among them and said, peace be with you. So this is after Jesus has been crucified. It's at the beginning of the week, and the disciples are in a room, and is the door locked or unlocked according to the text? Locked. And why is the door locked? They're afraid. What are they afraid of? Jesus told them he was going to die and he was going to come back. They are afraid that the Jewish leaders who crucified their Messiah are going to come for them and are going to crucify them. They are scared for their lives, and so they are locked away in a room, and they are so petrified that if anyone knocks on the door, they're going to take our lives. They don't want to answer the door. They don't want to talk to anyone. They're sitting in a room afraid, and Jesus busts through the door, like literally walks through it. He like morphs through it. He like Star Trek beams into the room. And he appears before them, and look what happens next. It says, they were startled and frightened, thinking they saw a ghost. He said to them, why are you troubled? Look at my hands and my feet. It is I myself. Touch me and see. A ghost does not have flesh and bones, as you see I have. When he had said this, he showed them his hands and feet. And while they still did not believe it, because of joy and amazement, he asked them, do you have anything here to eat? They gave him a piece of boiled fish, and he took it and he ate it in their presence. He said to them, this is what I told you while I was still with you. Everything must be fulfilled that is written about me in the law of Moses and the prophets and the Psalms. So Jesus appears to his disciples. He beams through the room, hangs out, and says, guys, I'm in the text, but you know what their response was to seeing Jesus rise from the grave? They were afraid. Guys, I'm not a ghost. Like, look, you can literally touch. See these holes in my hand from the nails that they pierced my hands, and the holes in my feet? You can touch them. Give me a high five. And they're like, yeah, no, I'll pass. Take your word for it. At this moment, though, they are so afraid, out of amazement and joy, they still don't believe he is alive. That they are now seeing Jesus from the grave, and they're like, this is really exciting. I really like this. I think this is good news. I might tweet this one day, but right now I'm scared out of my mind. This is scary. Like a guy coming back from the dead. I know you said you were going to do it, but I'm just scared. I'm afraid. It was not the words, do not be afraid, that made the disciples fearless. What made them fearless was the fact that they ate with a man who rose from the grave. If you're following along in the text, it wasn't the fact that Jesus said, stop being scared, don't be afraid. Can I just remind you how it calmed the storm? None of that helped the disciples. And ultimately, I don't believe that that helps you. Just knowing that God is with you, or just knowing that God says, don't be afraid, or just trusting that God is in control, and even believing that Jesus died on the cross and rose again, does not make you fearless. What makes you fearless is when you have interaction with Jesus. And when you go more from just believing that he existed to having a relationship with him. And when you have a relationship with him, and you eat and you hang out with him, and you allow him to intersect with your life, and you see this isn't just some story that people have held on to for 2,000 years. This was a real man, and believing in him and what he did, it gives me faith, and that faith allows me to believe that the one that I worship overcame death. Woo. Today in our world, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of things that you're afraid of. And some things are just silly things, but a lot of the things that we're afraid of, like, they're real. Like, we're afraid of terrorism, we're afraid of cancer, we're afraid of the unknown, we're afraid of real things. The The problem is that ultimately we're afraid of death. And when you're afraid of death, you start playing it safe with your life. This quote by Maya Angelou is incredibly convicting. I love what she says. She says, what is fear of living? It's being preeminently afraid of dying. It is not doing what you came to mindlessness. The antidote is to take full responsibility for yourself, for the time you take up and the space you occupy. If you don't know what you're here to do, then just do some good. I love that quote. I think the problem with that quote, though, is that when we're afraid to die, we become afraid to live, and we don't even know what good is. And if the Easter story tells us anything, it tells us that it's okay to be afraid. Even Jesus' closest followers were afraid. They were afraid even after they saw him raised from the grave. But what helped them overcome their fear is that they ate with a guy who